Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Be Yourself Unapologetically podcast. I'm your host, Becca, and I hope you have a cup of tea and you're ready to listen to tonight's episode. So, tonight is going to be basically about the girl who never quite fit in. And obviously, that's the girl, me, that I'm talking about. So, we start with the beginning. Being undiagnosed and the story behind the mask. And that's where the title of tonight's show, The Girl Who Never Quite Fit In, comes from. So I don't remember a time when I ever really fit in. Even as a child, I always felt like there was this invisible wall between me and everybody else. Like I'd missed the day they handed out the instructions for how to be human. Teachers used to say I was bright but distracted, daydreamy, too chatty, too sensitive, too much, and yet somehow not enough. At home, I felt everything in high definition. The tone in someone's voice, the scratch of a label, the flicker of the light in the corner of the room. It was like the world had its volume turned up too loud. And when I tried to explain it, the way things just felt different, people brushed it off and say like, stop overreacting, don't be so dramatic. Everybody feels like that sometimes. So I learned early on that my feelings were wrong, that who I was deep down needed fixing. They thought it was anxiety, then depression, then maybe trauma. Over the years, the labels changed, but none of them really fit. I was given tablets, told to go to therapy, and still something inside whispered, this isn't all of it. I remember lying in bed at night as a teenager, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations over and over, convinced I'd said something wrong. The paranoia of being too weird, too intense, too much. I just hated how my mind wouldn't stop. It spun like a carousel that I just couldn't get off. And yet on the outside, I smiled. I became the girl who was the party animal, always trying to be fine, the friend's helper, the fixer, the quiet achiever who never felt at peace and never ever completed anything that I ever did due to, I don't know, letting things get in my way and getting distracted. Looking back now, I see the signs were there all along. The sensory overloads, the hyper focus when I was interested in something, the black and white thinking. I was told to stop reading between the lines, yet I was thinking the wrong way. The way that I could feel someone's energy before they even spoke, that was put down due to just being paranoid. I found even friends hard to trust, but it wasn't really them, it was me. But back then no one was talking about ADHD or autism in girls. The research honestly was written about boys, fidgeting, climbing walls, bouncing off chairs. Not the class clown, the anxious girl who stared out the window and was actually quite bright in school. but didn't apply herself. The National Autistic Society has spoken about the lost generation of women and girls who slip through the cracks. We learnt to perform, we learnt to copy, we learnt to mask. We became experts in reading faces, not because we were naturally good at it, because we had to survive. And yet I still questioned how people really thought about me. I wish someone had seen it back then. I wish someone had told that little girl that she wasn't broken. She was just wired different, and that her sensitivity wasn't a flaw, it was her gift. So if you're listening to this and you were that girl too, the one who felt everything too deeply, who never quite understood why life felt like walking through a world that wasn't built for you, just know it wasn't your fault. You weren't lazy. You weren't crazy. You were just unseen. And being unseen hurts more than anyone ever tells you. So when I hit my teens, I became a master of pretending. It wasn't a conscious choice. It was survival. I just became the rebellious one because I kind of learned to copy. I studied people. I mirrored their expressions, their tone, their laugh. I would always be the one putting myself out there just to kind of seem normal. Every day it was a performance. I was covering up things that had happened to me. I was covering up everything. And that party animal was the mask that I wore. I didn't even know that I was acting at the time. At school, I'd scan the room, figuring out who I needed to be to blend in that day. Funny, quiet, confident, invisible, or loud, rebellious. The one that was always getting in trouble. I could switch masks faster than I could breathe. But at night, when the mask slipped, I would fall apart. I would slip into a depression. I'd be crying for no reason, having panic attacks. My thoughts would be spiraling. And then I would feel guilty. Guilty that I was a bad person. I had no real reason to feel that way, right? And when things happened to me, I was just kind of told that I was ungrateful, and I didn't appreciate what I had. But nobody really understood what was going on because nobody knew the real me. And when I was feeling down and depressed, people would tell me I had no reason to feel that way. So I pushed it down and I kept going, because girls like me don't stop. We have to hold it together and smile while we're crumbling inside. When I reached adulthood, I thought things would make more sense, but instead life just got louder. That voices in my head telling me that I didn't deserve to be here, I didn't belong anywhere, I didn't fit in. Relationships felt confusing. Social situations felt draining. And the smallest change, like a cancelled plan or a harsh tone, it could send me into days of overthinking. I would overthink conversations. I would overthink even just an invitation. When I'd be out with my friends, I would question whether they really wanted me there with them or not, because I didn't feel like I was like them. Like they kind of knew what they wanted, they kind of knew where they wanted to go, and I still didn't have a clue what I wanted with my life. I went to see doctors and I was given the labels of depression, anxiety disorders, borderline traits, obsessive compulsive thoughts. And for years I believed them because they were the professionals, right? But something inside of me never ever sat right. It was like treating the symptoms without understanding the wound. The pills dulled the edges and the intensity of the feelings, but they never made me feel whole. I always felt like there was something missing. Masking became my full-time job. When I was at work, I would have friends and I would still question whether I fitted in with them. Like, I laughed, I rehearsed conversations, I'd go home, and again I'd just feel down and depressed, as they would call it back then. I thought I was weak, I thought I was lazy, but now I know that that was autistic burnout. And I've only learnt this through being a parent to a neurodivergent child, now teenager. I mean, autistic burnout. Why didn't I know back then? But neither did anybody else, and neither did the doctors. A 2020 study in Frontiers in Psychology found that autistic women often experience chronic exhaustion from masking. A relentless need to hide their true selves to fit into societal expectations. That was me, always performing, never actually resting. It was like living my entire life in disguise. And I had that many different identities and I changed my image so many times. I knew I was different and I hung around with different people, different crowds, always trying to find the crowd that I fitted into. And I forgot who I was underneath. I used to think that paranoia was part of who I was, this constant fear that people secretly disliked me or were talking about me, but now I understand it differently. That paranoia was the byproduct of decades of misunderstanding and rejection, because when you spend years being told your reactions are a diagnosis, a label, they're wrong, your brain learns not to trust itself. You start to believe that you're broken and that you have to apologise just for existing. And yet, even in the middle of all that pain, I still thought, maybe I need to be better. Maybe I need to be more organised. Maybe I need to be more normal. Maybe I'll finally feel okay. I will find my crowd. I pushed myself harder in friendships, in relationships. I became the dependable one, the strong one, the one that would try to fix other people. But that just led me to coming apart at the seams and having outbursts of anger for always having to be the one that was there for everybody else. And inside, I was so tired. And that's how it used to come out, in bursts of anger. That was put down to my trauma. That was put down to a diagnosis. I was even put on antipsychotics, and I thought, that's it, I'm psychotic. And the reason why antipsychotics worked was because they hushed the noise, they stopped my brain from overthinking. And I'm like in my late 40s now, and I still take antipsychotics because I'm scared of what would happen if I don't. I didn't know that what I was doing was really camouflaging, and it was a form of social survival seen in women with autism and ADHD. According to research from Cambridge University, women mask so well that it often leads to misdiagnosis, late diagnosis, and mental health conditions like depression and anxiety. I wasn't broken, but I was burnt out from pretending. If you've ever felt that kind of exhaustion, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes you want to disappear, please know I feel you. You're not dramatic, you're not lazy, you're just tired of performing. And that kind of tired is sacred because it means you've been fighting a war that no one else could see. So by the time I had my daughter, I promised myself I'd understand her in ways I never felt understood. I watched her grow, her quirks, her sensitivity, her big, beautiful emotions. She felt everything in the loudest way possible, just like I used to. When she was little, people said she was spirited, that she was shy one day, fearless the next. They didn't really see the meltdowns, the overwhelm, the way she clung to me when the world felt too loud. But I did, I saw all of it because I recognised it. When the diagnosis finally came, I remember sitting there nodding, trying to stay strong. But inside something cracked open. It was like someone had just turned a light on in a room that I'd lived in my whole life. I didn't just see her, I saw me. All the pieces I'd buried, all the pain I'd normalised, all the years I thought I was broken, suddenly it started to make sense. That night I sat in her room while she slept, like I did many nights when she was being told that she was the bad child, she was this, she was that. And when she was diagnosed with ADHD, even though I so believed she had autism, I cried. It wasn't out of sadness, but it was probably out of grief for the little girl I used to be, the one who never had a name for what she was feeling. It's strange, isn't it? You spend your whole life searching for answers, then one day you find them in your own child. I remember whispering to her, "You're not broken. You're just built differently, and that's okay. And as I said it, I realised I was saying it to myself too. There's something profoundly healing about seeing yourself through your child's eyes. It's like the universe giving you another chance to understand what you went through, and this time with love instead of shame. Watching her stim, her hyper-focus, watching her care so deeply, it all clicked. I finally understood why I'd spent my life feeling like I was too much, because she's too much for most people. She used to be so like happy in the mornings. She'd be like, hi to her friends, and they'd all just be like, oh. I mean, I loved the way she was. She was such a happy-go-lucky little child. But she was treated like a disruptor. Like there was something wrong with her. I even remember being told by the headmistress of her first ever school that autism and ADHD didn't exist, and it reminded me of how my whole life had been. But after knowing what I knew, and that she definitely had some neurodivergence, I started researching everything I could, books, research papers, podcasts. I was researching and researching and researching. I'd fall down that late night Google rabbit hole of self-discovery, and it was all there, plain as day. Women with ADHD and autism often go undiagnosed, and for decades. And it's because we mask, we internalize, because our pain is quieter. According to ADHD women, it's the ADHD Women Foundation. Women and girls are still drastically underdiagnosed. I've spoken about this before, how the ADHD diagnosis came from a teacher saying that she was disruptive in class. And once she was diagnosed with ADHD, being clever meant that they didn't even assess her for autism, and the school weren't willing to pay. But you've heard about all this on another podcast. So women are still drastically underdiagnosed. Women drastically underdiagnosed, especially those who appear high functioning, or the ones that are like too perfect and well behaved. The truth is, we were all just camouflaged by our survival. And as I learnt more, I realised how much of my mental illness was really untreated neurodivergence. That constant anxiety wasn't fear, it was sensory overload. That depression wasn't laziness, it was burnout. That paranoia wasn't madness, it was years of rejection sensitivity from being misunderstood. For the first time, I looked back on my life and felt compassion instead of shame, because for a lot of my life I felt ashamed that I was a bad person and there was something wrong with me. Because now I know I wasn't broken, I am wired differently, and in my daughter I can see the beauty of that wiring, the creativity, the empathy, the fierce love, the honesty. All the things the world once tried to quiet in me are now celebrating her. She's my mirror, my second chance, and through her I finally learned to love the version of me I spent a lifetime trying to hide. There's a strange grief that comes with understanding yourself too late. It's not just sadness. It's this quiet mourning for all the years that you've spent pretending and listening to people to just tell you to just get on with it because they do not understand neurodivergence. And you hear a lot of people saying, well, I must have had something, but there's no point in getting diagnosed with it now. But it's like, well, if you still feel like you're masking and it's causing problems, why would you just keep dismissing it? I mean, all the years that you spend pretending, surviving, guessing who you're supposed to be, it got to a point where I thought, I'm going to finally allow myself to whisper the words. I think I'm autistic. I think I have ADHD. It wasn't about needing a label, as a lot of the generation think. It's like, oh, people want labels now, so you can claim money for a label. And it's nothing to do with that. We don't label our children to get more money, and I really hate the generation that sees it that way. It's about finding the language for their struggles and their pain, as well as our own. I feel relieved now. Things make sense, and why I felt so exhausted by social situations and like I never felt like I fit in or I was meant to be there, and why my emotions seemed so big and I'd get so depressed, and sometimes I was so hyper, and that side of me everybody would think was great, party animal, but then I would sink down into these deep depressive episodes. But it wasn't that, it was overwhelm. And it's like my mind was a storm that never stopped spinning. I mean, the sadness, the deep bone level grief for the girl who spent decades thinking she was defective. I look back at her and I'm like, I'm so sorry that you were let down so much. So for every doctor that told me I was anxious, for every friend who drifted away because I was too much, and for every time I forced myself to smile through burnout, I wish I could go back and hold her, that younger me, and tell her that she was never the problem, that her brain was simply wired for a world that didn't know how to love her. Healing, I've learned, isn't pretty. As I always say, it's not linear, it's not a straight line, it's not a sudden revolution. Healing is always messy. It's crying in your car after a long day because you can't mask anymore. It's setting boundaries with people, but feeling guilty when you do it. It's learning that rest isn't laziness, it's survival. Some days I still fall back into old patterns, apologising for existing, doubting myself, shrinking to fit. But because I can see it now and I notice it, now I catch it. And when I do, I gently remind myself I don't have to perform anymore. There's a peace in unmasking, but there's fear too. Because when you've spent a lifetime being who people wanted you to be, you have to learn who you are all over again. I'm still learning what I like, what I need, what really matters to me, what I need, what overwhelms me, what makes me feel alive, learning that it's okay to stim. I mean, they called it restless leg syndrome. And I used to take tablets for that. I'm learning that it's okay to say no, and that it's okay to take up space even if the world still calls you too much. So for anyone listening who's where I was, I'm still waiting for my diagnosis, but I'm on the list. So for people that are still waiting, misdiagnosed, misunderstood, or still waiting to be seen, please know you are not behind, you are not broken, you are becoming. The real you has always been there, waiting patiently, beneath the layers of survival. And when you start to unmask, when you finally allow yourself to exist exactly as you are, that's when life begins to make sense. I often think about my daughter when I start to doubt myself. She's so unapologetically her. The world is starting to make her think that she shouldn't be who she is. And that's heartbreaking that it still goes on today. But she doesn't yet know how to hide the parts of herself the world might find too loud or too bright, because I've encouraged it in her to speak up, to be herself. She's very sensitive, and people have managed to manipulate that. But the most beautiful thing is that she's still whole, and I want to keep her that way. And in doing that, I'm learning to keep me that way too. Because maybe healing isn't about becoming someone new. Maybe it's about remembering who you are, or who you were, before the world told you that you needed to change. If any part of this story feels like yours, if you spent years feeling different, misunderstood, or lost inside your own mind, please reach out for help. Here in the UK, the following organisations offer support, guidance, and assessment advice. There's the ADHD Foundation, the National Autistic Society, Mind UK, the NHS Right to Choose pathway. You're not alone. You're part of a community of people who have lived in the shadows for too long, and we're finally stepping into the light together. So this is me, unmasked, and maybe, finally, that's enough.